On today's bonus episode, it's a brand new view on cannabis. I sit down with Beau Cleeton of Canadian Lumber, Brett Evans, creator of the Doobtool, and SKOSHA's Joe Sanford to chat all about the cannabis industry. Among other things, we talk about what it's like working in this new industry, some of the challenges that come with it, and how we can end certain stigmas surrounding cannabis. Sit back and enjoy.
I was the same old me with the same old blues. I was the same old me with the same old blues. I was the same old me with the same old blues.
And we are live from the SKOSHA Education Center for a special episode of Brand New View on Cannabis. I'm joined today by Brett Evans, Beau Cleeton, and Joe Sanford. Thanks, guys, for joining us today. So let's get into it. How did you guys find your start in the cannabis industry? Beau, why don't we begin with you?
And honestly, I realized at visiting a friend's art studio one night, and I looked at his coffee table, realized every single rolling paper on his coffee table, except for one, was American. The one that wasn't was from France. And this was 2 years before legalization. So I said to myself, I can do that. So I did that.
Okay. Very nice. Just keeping it simple. I like that. Brett, what about yourself?
So my name is Brett Evans. I am the CEO and co-founder of Doobtool Inc. We created a cannabis case and multi-tool that allows you to transport and prepare cannabis products on the go, more or less like the Swiss Army knife of cannabis. I got into the cannabis industry back in 2014 when I started an organization called the Canadian Pro-Cannabis Group. What we did was we connected patients to cannabis-educated physicians and clinics across Atlantic Canada and bridged the gap between the two. That kind of started to phase out around 2016. Before that, I had the idea already set for Doobtool, and as the Canadian Pro-Cannabis Group kind of phased out, we turned into full cannabis accessory sector and wanted to bring this tool to life. So we started in 2016 and we launched our cannabis accessory, the Doobtool cannabis case and multi-tool, right before legalization. So,
right on. And last but not least, Joe.
I'm Joe Sanford. I'm the COO and founder of Breathing Green Solutions, also known as SKOSHA, for our recreational brand of cannabis. So I'm in a little bit different side of the industry than my two mates here. We are a producer based out of Wentworth, Nova Scotia. We were the first licensed to produce cannabis and for sale in Nova Scotia. So we started this journey roughly 6 years ago. I was, a previous grower, home grower before the recreational market came around, and I saw a real need for quality product coming out into the recreational market. So the way we structured our business, we basically went to friends and family. So we're for a money raise. So we are slightly different than a lot of our competitors in the industry. We are not publicly traded. We control the company, and we have put all of our product into the local market here in Nova Scotia. And our vision from day one is to put out top quality cannabis that will compete worldwide.
I can't wait for that. All right, right on. So being that it is a very new industry and, there are some things going on with that, how does your company's mandate and position within the cannabis industry give you a new view on cannabis?
I guess our mandate is when we look at the product and when we originally started with the product, what we wanted to kind of come out with was a two-sided aspect to not only our product but our business strategy. So we really look at and how we break that down is our what versus our why. So it's looking at, what do we do? We produce cannabis accessories, but most importantly, why do we do that? What is the message that we want our brand to hold as a result of putting out cannabis accessories? So, and to break that down and to kind of answer the question mark and more of a new view is in the fact of, we wanted to try to eliminate the stigma around cannabis and around primarily the cannabis consumer. So we didn't want the consumer to look very much in the fact of, when you thought of somebody that consumed cannabis, you thought of somebody that was, lazy on their couch, eating pizza, playing video games. We wanted to come up with a tool that goes, you know what, that's the industry that prohibition is kind of the image that prohibition is kind of put out there. But we wanted to make sure that, when we came up with the tool, it was going to kind of showcase the actual consumer. And that's me, you, the person that does sit on the couch and play video games, but the person that also grabs their cannabis and consumes on a hiking trail or biking. So what we really want to do is we want the Doobtool to kind of be a catalyst for the on-the-go user and to kind of bridge that being out and about and still using cannabis, or being active and still using cannabis. And our tool allows you to do that with it being kind of a grab and go tool. As long as you have it packed with what you need, it has everything kind of incorporated within the tool in order to help you transport and prepare. So if you're grabbing it off your bookshelf to roll or to prepare when you're in your home, or you have it with you when you're camping or you're in your tent or you're doing something at the beach, it's kind of that all-in-one grab and go tool. So when we went forward with the business strategy, we really wanted to showcase our what and our why being chipping away at that stigma and kind of showing the new face or the new view on not only cannabis but the cannabis consumer.
Mm-hmm. Any type of person can consume cannabis. It's not just the couch potatoes.
Exactly. It's me, you, it's your grandma down the street, it's the person that delivers your mail, it's everybody, right? And we wanted to showcase that and not have kind of what prohibition is left over of the, the Cheech and Chong era of that's who consumes cannabis. And, if you consume cannabis that way, that's perfect, but not everybody is that, is as that style of consumer, right?
Yeah, exactly. And Beau, as you've entered the industry with Canadian Lumber, have you seen that kind of grow different types of users?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, for us, our mandate, I really wanted to produce the best quality rolling paper we possibly could put it in the market space. And the reason why was because we wanted to produce, for not just our rolling papers, but for every accessory then thereafter, to be able to produce the best quality product and accessory we possibly could for the mindful smoker. And it's this idea that someone who's conscious of what they're smoking, right? I mean, for myself, and I know a lot of other cannabis consumers, we are careful about the buds we choose and which strains we smoke and everything else. And that same care and attention should come to the rolling papers that you choose, to the container that you store it in. Our rolling papers, because you want to make sure that you're not adding chemicals to that process of consumption, right? Because there's some rolling papers that have a lot of chemicals in them, and during that combustion, you're just inhaling that. Right? And so the interesting thing for us was that we saw this not only for ourselves, that this was something that we believed in and how we approached cannabis, but it was something that as a whole that we see as a shift in the industry, right? Because of the fact that with legalization, the majority that allowed for everyone that didn't openly say that they were cannabis consumers to suddenly say that they're cannabis consumers. So all of a sudden you had that lawyer, you had a judge, you have someone that owns an accounting firm, you have someone that owns a hair studio. You have all these business owners from different walks of life. You have all of these people that have a wide scope of jobs from, different age groups, different walks of life, coming out and saying, I'm a daily consumer of cannabis. Well, at the same time as their daily consumer of cannabis, they're choosing maybe organic groceries, they're choosing an electric car, they're making conscious purchases in their life that also should apply to cannabis. Mm-hmm. And for us, that was the reason why we went forward with trying to produce the cleanest possible paper.
Okay.
Right. And we see that in the industry. We're surrounded by daily cannabis users that are mindful consumers.
It's trending that way.
Yeah. Because we always were.
That's true. Yeah.
It's just now we're open and public about it.
I think it's funny too that in the fact of, you saw people that were, consumers of cannabis, and to touch on Beau's point, it's like, it was mindful in every other action, whether it be getting groceries, whether it be driving an electric car, whether it be what have you. They want to know if their, strawberries are sprayed or not. But then, they're just grabbing whatever off the shelf and consuming that when it comes to cannabis. So it's cool that people are becoming mindful of that at that stage, right?
Okay, and aligning yourself with that type of lifestyle.
Mm-hmm. Through and through. Capturing
that market, very nice. Joe, what about yourself with the new view?
Yeah, those were great comments by the guys about the stigma and the different users that we're seeing with cannabis as the recreational market evolves and the stigma starts to hopefully work itself away from local communities and Canada as a whole. I'll take a bit different approach here, and specifically with cannabis itself. My journey through this business thus far has completely changed my view on the opportunities and the possibilities with the plant itself. So traditionally, marijuana and cannabis has been used for many different types of use, whether it's medical, recreational, spiritual, nutraceutical, etc. The list goes on, fibers. We're now seeing the cannabis plant being completely broken down, and we're getting into research projects. We're having labs analyze every single compound of cannabis and what that effect will have with the end user. So to me, it's a whole new game, and it's extremely exciting because a lot of the bad experiences that people may have had in the past are hopefully, we're working our way towards eliminating those experiences, so that users, when they go for the first time to try a product, there's going to be better information there for whoever is producing it, whoever is selling it, to guide those customers, to the proper forms, the proper strains, and the proper dosages for the medicine or the recreational product they're looking for.
And I think that's so important because I can remember, it could have been maybe junior high, Reefer Madness. I don't know if that rings a bell for anyone.
It definitely rings a bell for us, for
right?
sure. Yeah.
We're fighting, decades of this stigmatization that, we're not going to get into who was behind all that, but this is a step in the right direction, without a doubt. And with the Doobtool, of course, you get that recreation, you're on the go. Hey, you don't have to just sit at home and, actually, that commercial, you sit on the couch and you smoke and it looks like they're just melting into the couch. Once again, these are the things that come to mind when I think of, media, when their focus and attention was on marijuana or cannabis. It was more in a negative light. So what are some of the, speaking of which, good segue here, what are some of the biggest hurdles you guys have faced in the cannabis industry?
There's a lot of things now that we're launched, now that we're in the industry, that maybe a lot of people don't think of, or in the fact of being kind of a 21st century startup. If you were in a watch company or doing something, there'd be a lot of things that you wouldn't have to think about that we do have to think about. I think the biggest one too, to shed a little bit of light on, kind of one of the hurdles, and I was kind of talking about this with some few people here today, was logistically. Right? When we get our product made, how do you get it to Canada? And we have it made overseas, so we're looking at what ports does our freight stop at, and what are we deemed as? Are we deemed as paraphernalia, or do they just let it through? Because then they can seize your shipment as a result of that. So looking at kind of how to get it here and how to get around a lot of these hurdles is something that's huge. And then just as far as touching on like social media, not being able to promote and sponsor on social media, whether that be Facebook or Instagram. A lot of our audience is looking at and finding products and discovering cannabis or discovering the new thing through those platforms. So to not be able to kind of shed the light on your product or your business or your strategy or your mindset of your company through those avenues is something that's very difficult, I find. But at the same time, and to kind of touch on Joe's point a bit, once you get past those, or once that you see you are still moving forward and these limitations and regulations are still upon you and you're still moving forward, you get super excited and even more engaged to keep on going, right? So I think those types of things coming together at one time, you're fighting not only, so like we built a brand new product, we built a new business to start that, to sell that product, and that business is in a new industry. So it's new. So it's the trifecta. You're trying to figure out kind of how does this thing work and where do we fit? And with an email, you're gone into a new business strategy direction. So a lot of these things coming down at once. But once you see that you can kind of get over that hurdle and you can kind of move forward, there's a whole new, a whole new kind of energy that goes into it. And you're like, yes, you know what I mean? Like we got here with all of this and we're still here, then like, you know what I mean? Let's just keep on moving forward. But I think we've heard as, pioneering an industry, that's what you have to go through at the beginning. You have to put in that work and you have to put in that time and you have to put in that emotion, more than anything of having things not work out, that are, working out with other industries or working out with other people. And you're like, but we're super excited to be here and we've, we seem to be on a steady track right now. So, fingers crossed.
You got a great attitude, I'll tell you that much. And it's true, you have to be very flexible in this industry. And as entrepreneurs, you're going to face hurdles in any industry, and you got to be able to get back up on the horse and keep going. Beau, anything a little bit different?
Well, I mean, sure. Starting any widget-based business, right? Product-based business, you're going to have hurdles: manufacturing, shipping, duties, tariffs. Borders are an issue, especially when you're crossing multiple borders. And like we know our whole supply chain, and understanding that whole supply chain and where, hemp is grown and how it gets to a manufacturer. And sure, those were all hurdles we've had. I don't consider them to be anything more than what I would expect. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because we were a startup, starting a new business, building a new product. You're going to have those kinds of hurdles. The thing that I wasn't expecting that Brett touched on was, we're not an LP, so I didn't expect to be banned from advertising in Instagram or Facebook. I didn't expect for me to be one of the only age-gated accessory products. Rolling papers are the only accessory that you have to be 18 and over to buy. You can buy an empty cones or cigarette tube at any age, but a rolling paper you have to be 18 for.
You got to be 19 plus to listen to this podcast.
Yeah. So I mean, like, it's super, for us navigating that I wasn't expecting. But I think the biggest hurdle, in all honesty, dealing with it has been dealing with people's perception of cannabis, and the fact that, for some people, for me to turn around and say I closed a marketing firm and shut that down to start a rolling paper business, people looked at me like I was crazy. What do you mean you're starting a rolling paper business? Are you serious? Really?
They're not looking at you like that anymore.
No, they're not looking at me like that. Fair enough, Joe.
I think they've changed their view for sure, yeah.
So I mean, like, but there's still stigma, right? Like, a lot of people, when I say that this is what I do, they think I spend my day smoking weed. I don't spend all day sitting there smoking weed. I wish. I think we all wish, but things still have to get done.
Yeah, of course, things do need to get done, of course. Yeah. So legalization is new, and Joe, I know you touched on that a bit, but what were the changes going from it being a legal product to the legalization process?
Yeah, that whole lead up for us, like I said, we started, well before cannabis was legalized. We received our medical sales license 2 days before legalization, so it was kind of a sweet moment. We weren't on the shelves first day, but we were there a couple of weeks after legalization. But yeah, just trying to work with the team on building your goals and your vision for the company, not really knowing how things are going to roll out. Again, that's a really difficult thing to do when you have that stigma against you. Our company, we have a very diverse group of investors from all walks of life, all age ranges. We found the support because we've had so many people that are close to us have positive experiences with medical marijuana. And so that's really where our focus was out of the gates, was the medical side of cannabis. We, however, aren't selling into the medical market right now. We are ramping up our production to be able to do that with coming out with CBD products in the next couple of months to really focus on the medical side of things. So It was tough in the beginning, not knowing where the rec market's going. And now we're in another phase with edibles and concentrates coming up here where we're looking at that all over again. So you have to take a lot of risks, and you just have to go out there and do your research and your homework and make sure that, the risk you're taking is hopefully going to be the right one.
Absolutely. And obviously on the accessory side, not much you can do before legalization, but I'm wondering, were you guys involved at all with the industry before legalization, Brett?
So I guess when we started out, we did a lot of our trial runs through the different, Mary Jane's, the different head shops around the city, as well as the dispensaries as well. And we kind of put it out there to see kind of the reaction. That's what we were really trying to understand, was the reaction. I think you have to understand as well, you look at, before legalization and after legalization. Before legalization, a lot of people have the idea that once legalization hit, then the consumer came out and said, oh, now I can try cannabis, And you do have a small degree of people that are like that. But I think you also have to understand that when legalization hit, when the doors opened to the NSLC, you had an educated consumer already. They had already been consuming. They already knew what they liked. They already knew what worked and what didn't. And so you're really trying to go out there in a new regulatory kind of framework, and you're trying to gauge audience reactions, right? How do you like this? We're coming out with a tool. What do you like? What you don't like? And then trying to quantify that. Look at the numbers, right? A lot of people say they don't like this or they do like that, or and trying to then go back to your manufacturer and change those different aspects of your tool. So in regards to a cannabis accessory and in a like a kind of a hardware-based accessory, what we're really trying to understand after legalization is now getting that information, that statistical information of these amount of consumers consume this way. Trends show that it's this, and then more kind of looking at your brand more closely of just, we like this about your brand, or we don't like that about your tool, or we love that about your tool. So we can go back and then say, we listened, we changed it, and now how do you like it, right? And then we keep going back and forth and back and forth. So, keeping in mind that after legalization, it wasn't a new, that the audience wasn't kind of all brand new to this, that they really came with their own set of standards. They set the bar for themselves. And now what we're doing as industry members is, just listening. What do you want from us? What do you want us to change about our brand? How do we get to the point? How do we set a bar? Because the bar's not set yet, right? They come in with the bar set already, but now we have to do that in a legal framework. Where is that bar set for you guys? And then what do you need from us to end up actually giving that and providing that to you? Because as much as we would like to think that, we're kind of up here at the wheel, we are, but the person, the audience, the consumer is telling us where to drive, right? So it's just more or less listening to them after legalization and say, is this what you want from us? No. Okay, how can we make this better?
Do you find there's more people coming out of the woodwork as each week passes?
100%. Yeah, like I have my, you have like your different people trying to, like your aunts and your uncles that you never knew even consumed or telling 100%. You something,
Totally.
You're like, holy smokes.
I've got family members that I didn't know smoked, and now they're saying that they've smoked their whole life. And I'm like, really?
I was just telling the guys before I got here, I was over in PEI, and my uncle, who's going on 60 now, showed up with 3 freshly rolled joints, ready to rock. He was like, no glaucoma for me.
And you can see that they're really freshly rolled and nice. So it's like, you've been smoking for a while, yeah. Right? It's like, this isn't like,
This isn't a pregnant, crooked joint.
Exactly.
You've got some style and finesse here.
Yeah, you've done this before, I imagine.
Yeah.
100%. And he's an accountant, so
probably used a Doobtool.
That's it. Hopefully. Hey, Mark, that's where I need you to plug us in.
Should have given me a couple to bring over.
Sounds good.
Beau, similar question to you with legalization. Obviously, you started the Canadian Lumber. How long ago was it?
Just before legalization.
Just before legalization.
Yeah. So we were ready to go on in market. We were in market the year before, and we had basically launched about 10 months before legalization. But it wasn't like for me, the biggest change that I've seen after legalization, in all honesty, was the fact that it wasn't as open as I thought it was going to be. As a product, as an industry, as a lifestyle. I expected this is probably because, I've been a lifetime smoker, and after legalization, I was expecting, to walk down the street and see 6 or 7 people smoking weed. That still hasn't happened, right? So it's this. That's the thing that I'm still stunned by, is the fact that it's not normalized to the point of alcohol, even. Right? When prohibition on alcohol ended, it was the whole society, North American society, was in a big booze frenzy.
Party in the streets.
Party in the streets. The prohibition on cannabis ended. That didn't really happen.
I haven't seen much of a change.
Maybe we should just have a party in the street.
Let's do it.
We should do that, yeah.
Who's going to stop us?
But like it's so that, in all honesty, has been I think the biggest shock for me after legalization. And then we're starting to see some of this normal approach of having cannabis in your lifestyle now. Like, you're starting to see it in Instagram. You'll see people posting pictures of a new strain they bought, or them going out for an afternoon walk, having a smoke and stopping having a tea, instead of someone going to the beer garden, right? And that's the kind of content that I'm looking forward to seeing. Because in all honesty, I was expecting to see that 3-4 months out of the gate. And here we are, a year later, and it's just starting to happen,
What do
right?
you guys think that is?
Years and years of prohibition.
Well,
Miseducation.
locally here, it's the laws. I mean,
Yeah.
they legalized cannabis and then told us we can't walk down the street smoking a joint. So locally here,
In this
they're a little
municipality.
in this municipality, it's a little more stringent
Yeah.
to the freedoms with cannabis. And hopefully we will see that. Everything's going to take time. We can't expect as business people and people in society here that things are going to be perfect right out of the gates.
No.
I do take a strong stance that heavily regulating an industry in the beginning is a good way to go about it, and then as time goes on to loosen up those restrictions on the industry. Once the industry's established itself and you have people working in the industry that are following the rules, and that have taken a responsible approach to it and are putting money back into the communities. That's what we're going to hopefully see, and that's going to start to take that stigma off and hopefully normalize cannabis to Beau's fact.
Yeah, I agree with you there, Joe. Like, when at the birth of any new industry, you need a lot of regulations in order to help form that as a sound economical industry, right? In order for people to be making money, putting money back in the industry, for people to be making and producing responsible products, whether it's the flower for consumption or whether it's an accessory, there's still a responsibility in around producing all of these products. And without over-regulation at the very beginning, you end up having something where 8 months, 2 years down the road, certain people suddenly realize, well, that bag that I've been storing my cannabis in is leaching chemicals into my cannabis like crazy, and that bag shouldn't have been produced in the first place. Well, that's because we don't have any storage regulations, any regulations around producing storage right now for cannabis, right? Like there isn't any regulations whatsoever around producing rolling papers, right? So it's the same idea. Right now, we have a lot of regulations in and around producing flower. And as Joe said, as time goes and people become more responsible and as society itself becomes more educated, it's not so much that those regulations will lax, it's the fact that all the regulations will adjust and change as our industry grows and we all become more educated. What saddens me is, I just hope that, maybe living here in Halifax, I expected maybe our city to react vastly different than it did. I didn't expect a smoking ban, public smoking ban throughout the city. I considering how many people openly admitted that they smoked in this province before legalization,
Like one of the highest in the country. or
highest in the
something.
country. I expected us to kind of lean towards that in order to help our industry grow. Much like they've gotten behind the microbrew industry, much like they've gotten behind other stuff, right? Not to say that microbrew industry hasn't had its hurdles, it totally has, which we're all well aware of. But I expected the province and the city to get a little bit more behind it than they did.
I think too, like province to province is different too. Like maybe
So
you'll
different.
see kind of that uniform front throughout the whole country, right? It's like
Yeah.
somebody coming from Newfoundland is going, oh, this is what you like when we're meeting at different events and people are there from province to province. They're asking you like, how did you guys do it over there? Or, oh, you guys did it this way. Why? Or and everybody is so scattered.
that
and
why question.
Yeah, especially in Nova Scotia. They're like,
Why did you guys do it this way?
Yeah,
I don't know.
And we're like, listen, this is what it is. And to touch on Joe's point as well is, I think when you're implementing anything into society, it's easier to go tight and then loose than to try to go tight, right? So it's like, if we have the rules and regulations and we tighten them up, and then as we kind of see fit, we start to loosen them or tweak them a bit for different people that are in the industry or what have you. It's a lot easier than if you just went like free for all, and then hold on a guy, no, let's tighten this up again, and they throw a bunch of rules down, right? And everyone's like,
It's the Wild West.
Exactly. So I think a little bit a different perspective on my part as well is like I got into the industry in 2014. So in 2014, stigma was like rife. Like it was like ready to go. So I used to stand out and pass out informational pamphlets down on Spring Garden, and people would like rip them up and get them from me and then just throw them on the ground and different things. And it was like, so now getting into this industry, I was used to kind of that upfront and personal confrontation when it came to cannabis, and kind of challenging, okay, you think you're right with this, then like challenge my perspective on this, or what about that. And I think a lot of the time too, they were caught off guard with how you would actually agree with them. They'd be like, yeah, so you're for cannabis? Yeah, well, what about, consuming cannabis and driving? And I'm like, yeah, I don't think that's good. And they're like, oh,
It's
okay.
a substance that
thought you were the
alters
killer.
your
Yeah, like, no,
state of
you
consciousness.
shouldn't do that. And they're like, oh, okay, so we're like on the same page. Very much so. We might be on the same page with a lot of other things as well. But let's open this dialogue and let's have this conversation, right?
Yeah, that's what's so important. If people are willing to listen, then it's that much easier to get to the other side of this.
And listening with the intent of learning and not to answer, right? Listening not to be like, I'm going to get you on this one. It's like just listen and you go, oh, okay, maybe, I understand that point of, that perspective, right?
Exactly. I'm a little curious, Beau, you touched on the advertising regulations on social media, and I was wondering if anyone actually on the panel elaborate a bit more on that. I mean, how exactly are you allowed to advertise?
Well, Joe's got probably a very short statement to say about this.
No comment.
None.
I'll give you. He's like, I'll let Brett and Beau take it.
Yeah, we honestly, our only way is quality. We have to let the quality of our product, determine the path that our business goes down, and that's what we focused on. And the service that we provide to our customers and our followers, that's what we focus on. So that's our only way of advertising.
So
Word of mouth.
yeah, for Brett and I being accessories, I'll speak for myself, I won't speak for you, but sure, we're allowed to advertise. I could put up a billboard in downtown Toronto. That billboard could have my product there. I could have cannabis in the shot. I wouldn't be allowed to have it in the paper. I wouldn't be allowed to have someone consuming it in the shot, because then I'm advertising a cannabis lifestyle, and that's where I broach into the Cannabis Act. But at the same time, I'm not allowed to do any form of paid advertising on social media, because that's Facebook's own rule for Facebook and Instagram, that rolling papers aren't allowed to advertise. That's a separate specific rule underneath the cannabis section in their thing. They specifically
Just
name my product out, rolling papers.
Wow.
Yeah, saying all rolling papers are not allowed to advertise. I think it's number, 8 underneath the cannabis section for Facebook.
We fall in a lot of terms and conditions.
Yeah.
I think that's it. It's like, and for the people that don't understand why we can't, sponsor ads and different things, we're not allowed to do that. We're not allowed to endorse or pay in any endorsement at all through social media in Canada. But also, Facebook and Instagram run off a U.S. federal platform. So there we're paraphernalia. There we're illegal. Period. So I guess the biggest thing is like when you go to sponsor an ad, the first day that we launched, we're like, great, we're going to sponsor our ads, and we're going to like do what every other, 21st century startup is able to do and really take advantage of this platform. And they were like, yeah, you fall under the terms and conditions. And, when we went to source some funding through Indiegogo, through crowdfunding, it was the same thing. So we had a little glitch on our webpage through Indiegogo crowdfunding, and we contacted them And we said, hey, listen, we're just wondering why like this isn't working for us. And they were like, well, you won't really have to worry about that because you're not even allowed to be on the platform. So they took us down, and then we had to like tweak and turn a bunch of different things, throw it back up. And what ended up being a result of just like, you know, they got an introduction of our product. They got a very, very, very confusing way to, you know, support our campaign. You had to go through all these different steps, and it was like we had to offer different style of like, yeah, it was insane. But terms and conditions is something that I'm like, I bet we fall under your, you know, terms and conditions, or even with like merchant services, right? Anything that's based in the United States. You know, to go in there and to you know, have them a part of your company or what have you, you really have to either, you know, it's kind of, it works until it doesn't, right? And so, you know, Instagram, talking with our lawyer, looking at how to age gate our Instagram. But then if we go and contact Instagram and say, we want to be age gated, they're like, well, you're not even allowed to be on here. Age gated is for alcohol or for whatever, right?
Yeah,
so
can you let me know when you figure that one out?
That's it, yeah. Well, we're not sending out any emails anytime soon. We're just kind of, you know, riding with it, right? We're not allowed to sponsor. So again, too, what it ends up falling back on is us coming out and saying, listen, like you guys are the ones that are the, you know, like spreading the word for us, right? Because we can't really get past a certain point. After that certain point, we market and promote, and then we leave it up to the consumer to go, you know, have you ever tried Doobtool or Canadian Lumber or SKOSHA or what have you? So it's really up to you guys in order to move forward and kind of move our brand, and that word of mouth is like very, very, very important, at least for us. The word of mouth is like super, super important, and to have, you know, the local community and, you know, Atlantic Canadians or what have you, really focus on building the different people and the different industry members and companies that are within your area, right? So like we're kind of saying, hey, listen, we're biting the bullet and we're going to come out here and we're going to provide you with awesome products. What we hope you can do in return is tell your friends and tell people and recommend us, and, you know, like and share our content, and because all of that stuff's still allowed, right? You can like and share and repost and everything. So really, you know, having the audience understand their role in all of this. If you love to see Canadian Lumber, or you love to see SKOSHA, come out and support us at these events, or come out and buy our product, or tell your friends about our product. Like, that's super, super important, and what we really, at least for Doobtool Inc., what we really rely on. So.
And I think the word of mouth part, that in turn ends the stigma, or at least works at breaking that down.
Yeah, thank you. I was actually going to go there.
Oh,
that's
sorry,
brilliant.
Beau?
No, that's awesome. Because like that's part of it, right? Like the more that people are talking, not just about individual products, or whether it be an accessory, or whether it be flour, or whether it be, you know, CBD capsules, it's just engaging in a cannabis themed conversation allows, and the more people that we have that conversation with, breaks down that stigma. Right? And the more that we're talking about it as, you know, normal consumption. I was having a conversation with someone earlier about consumption, right? Like, you know, on a Saturday, it's normal for people to drink all day. Wake up in the morning and have a Caesar, and by mid-afternoon, they're having a rum and coke, and at the end of the night, you know, they're having a whiskey, right? Well, how is that any different from waking up in the morning and having a salad mix joint that's half CBD flower and half sativa flower, and having that as your first smoke in the morning, through then middle of the afternoon having a light sativa, right? To at the end of the day to sit down and watch a movie and you're smoking a super strong, heavy indica, right? That's why we have strains, right? So you can balance out that change of smoke throughout the day according to what you're doing, or your interactions with people, or what it is you need to get done, or what it is that you don't need to get done in the day, right? We have that kind of consumption for alcohol is totally 100% normal. It's even advertised. We see it on sandwich boards when you walk down the street on Sunday morning, right? This brunch includes a Caesar. I want my brunch to include a sativa joint.
Me too.
Right?
$3 joints.
Yeah, like, so
Come on now,
it's
guys.
going to. Sorry, Joe. $20 joints. That's better. But like, because that smoke complements my breakfast, maybe, or maybe I'm going. Ideally, you know, this is me being, you know, my hopes and dreams for Canada in a couple of years to have licensing. So I'm going to have my brunch at a restaurant that has a cannabis license. So the brunch I'm eating is infused somehow, right? My hollandaise sauce has CBD in it. yet my tea that I'm drinking has THC. Right? I'm picking
my
certain
language.
things, and I'm on the menu, and I'm mixing my breakfast order according, also knowing how much THC and CBD I'm consuming for my brunch because of how sore I am from the night before or whatever else that was happening. Right? Like that's the ideal situation, right? And I know that we can't be there tomorrow, but we can be there in 2-3 years from now.
Let's keep talking about it.
Yeah, if we keep talking about it. If people are engaged, if as a society we're talking about it, because then our politicians will react because the industry's asking them to react. Then we have businesses asking for them to react. We have people wanting these kinds of licensing, right? So it opens it up. We, in Nova Scotia, I feel too, we're at a unique position here. Every survey that's been done up to this point with legalization, we have the highest population of open smokers. Well, Nova Scotia right now has a huge amount of tourism that comes here through cruise ships. And with that, we have our alcohol industry is feeding off of that. We have wine tours, we have microbrew tours. Why don't we have a cannabis consumption tour somehow? Go to our national parks, and through that it's sponsored by Breathing Green, and they're able to try different strains. You know what I mean? That's not allowed right now with our regulations, but that should be, because that would be open market, right? That's how it becomes an economically sound environment for us all to grow.
Absolutely. And are there ways that we can get there faster?
Talking.
Dialogue.
Dialogue.
Open dialogue
Yeah.
with
Everyone.
everybody. You know, it's funny. I kind of reflect on this story. I met with my grandmother. She was sitting there, and I was talking to her, and she has a brother who has Parkinson's, and she said, he's doing fantastic now. You know, they switched him on this medicine, and he's doing great. It's so great to see that now I can interact with him, and I have my brother back, is what she said to me. And she didn't know, because they didn't tell her, but the medicine that he was switched to was cannabis. I knew that. And I'm saying, yeah, it's just that medicine is really good. I heard it's natural. Yeah, well, I don't care what it is, but it's working wonders for him. And, I get he's doing this, and it's calming the tremors down, and it's helping him in this way, and it's helping him in that way. And I said, well, what if, Nanny, what if I told you that it was cannabis, right? And she was like, what? And I said, what if I told you it was marijuana? And she, oh, yeah. No, Brett. Come on now. Why are you saying that, right? No, he would never. I know him. He's had a job for 35 years, worked at the post office. He's done, he's done this, and she's vetting him, right? She's trying to legitimize him to paint the picture of why he could never, look at this or depend on this as a medicine. And it's like, you know what? Actually, he is. But I won't tell that story. I'll allow him to tell that story to you. And so, because if I'm telling her, she's just, this young guy that, he's in the cannabis industry, and yes, he's just going to, but if he goes, somebody that she respects, somebody that has been working at the post office for 30 and has this and has that, says, no, you know what? The reason why I'm the way that I am right now, you saw what I was like before. The reason why I am the way I am right now is because I introduced cannabis as an alternative medicine. And I just think, having those conversations, those brand new views, of being, holy smokes, okay, this is actually doing what it is, right? And that, I see my, brother with Parkinson's, and I know he's not Cheech and Chong. I know he's Russell. This is who he is, and this is what he does, and he's still the same person, and he's still funny, and he's doing all of this. He's just in a lot less pain. He's not suffering from tremors as much, and it's making his life and the quality of life a lot better. So when you see that, I find when you have that kind of, that when it's tangible, when you can see it and feel it and look at it and go, wow, okay, I knew what you were like before, and then you started cannabis, and I see you're like now. You can't dispute that. You look at it and you go, okay. So if I was wrong, what else was I wrong about? And how else can cannabis help? And then that's when they go, call your grandson, ask your, But it's just funny to have, to have that dialogue open and to kind of show, right? A lot of people thought once legalization hit that it was going to be very much, everyone was going to be stoned like zombies walking down the street, right?
My favorite was my aunt called me up and she was like, when legalization comes, Beau, I'm actually afraid to go to the grocery store. I'm like, what? Yeah, I'm gonna be surrounded by stoners if I go to the grocery store late at night. And I'm
So
like,
they probably help you walk your groceries to your car, and
There's going to be no chips left.
I turn around to her. I'm like, I'm really sorry to say this to you, but you already are. If you going grocery shopping at 8 o'clock at night, I guarantee you half the people are baked.
when you see
It's
them
just-
actually,
that's-
yeah.
They're going grocery shopping at 8 at night. There's a reason. Especially if you go at midnight, you're totally surrounded by stoners. I hate to break it to you.
And when they're eating the chips while they're actually doing the shopping,
Yeah.
you know, that's a touch. Yeah, you can
Chip
tell that
aisle's
way.
getting a little thin here, guys.
They go to the bulk section first.
Yeah, absolutely. That's good. I'm wondering, back to touch on your point, Beau, with using cannabis in different ways, edibles, things like that. How many times do you run into people who are like, there's more than one different type of
All the time.
cannabis?
Especially when I get asked all the time, like, Beau, so do you smoke all day? And I'm like, not every day. Some days I do. Depends, on what I have to do that day and what I feel like when I wake up. And they're like, okay, so what? And then when I break that down, I have multiple different types of flower at different levels of THC, different levels of CBD. I also have, edibles and tinctures and some concentrates, depending on what it is, and also depending on what type of taste profiles I want. Because, I'm the type of smoker, I love my terpenes. It's the reason why I smoke with the clean, empty, burning paper that has no flavor. So I taste the cannabis, right? Because, in the middle of the day, especially around like late afternoon, I love a nice fruity smoke, right?
Oh, yeah.
Come sunset, something a little bit more piney. That's just me,
I think everyone's going to go next door after this.
right? Like I
You're
just
soothing us right now.
Set the mood, right?
it's like so I get asked all the time. It's so funny. Like I take a vial of tincture with me too sometimes when I go to house parties because I don't drink alcohol. So I'll get an iced tea or make my own non-alcoholic spritzer and then take my tincture out and I'm adding eyedroppers in and I'm looking around the room and I'm like, okay, everyone seems to be half in the bag, so I'm gonna put a little bit extra in the glass. And I get asked all the time, like, what are you doing? And I'm like, it's some THC. I want to get close to your wavelength. This is me getting close to your wavelength, right? And yeah, then I have that conversation because they're looking at me like going, that's cannabis? Yeah.
Yeah.
And you're having that conversation with them and you go over it all,
There
right?
you go.
It's a whole new world.
Oh, now we can't play that. We're gonna
That's it.
Disney's gonna be all
that
over
part out. We
that.
might get- yeah.
Unbelievable. Joe, similar to you, when you've got SKOSHA with different strains, do you have that as well, where people are like, "Oh, okay, I can feel like this, or I can feel like that"?
Yeah, exactly. There's only so much we can say because we can't really guide any of our users on any certain path. It's really up to the users now to go out there and what we can educate people on is that the effects are going to be different for each person that tries a different strain. All depending on the inner workings of your body, you're going to have a different experience, and it might not be THC and CBD related. It might be related to the terpenes that are in that specific strain. So really, what we encourage people to do is to try lots of different products, to go low and slow, and don't overconsume. Microdosing you're seeing becoming a huge thing with cannabis. 1-2 puffs, put it down, because you're just gonna respond and react a lot better to that when for new users. Obviously, our veterans users, they know what they're doing. But again, you're seeing a lot of people now that have been using cannabis their whole lives. Using different forms, using different strains. People are excited to try new things in the cannabis industry. We're consistently adding new strains to the market to see, what ones are welcomed the most. But at a certain point, we have to, sell what is going to sell the most of it. But we do agree that we want to put enough variants out there in the industry that we give all the consumers, as much choice as they possibly can have.
Yeah, I think that it's cool too in the fact that talking to somebody that either doesn't consume or hasn't consumed in a long time, they always like to tell you their story of that one time they consumed, right? And it's always something like so far out in the fact of like, yeah, I remember the time that like me and my friends went into the woods and we smoked a joint this big. And you're like, and I had the worst experience. I said, yeah, I would too, if I smoked a joint as long as my arm. I think so.
In the woods.
In the woods, right? So it's like,
Talk
it's,
about giving yourself anxiety and nightmares.
and that's it. I think they look at, a consumer, somebody that's a non-consumer looks at a consumer and goes like, I don't know, I just don't know how you do it, right? I don't know how you can sit back and smoke, these big joints or, eat these, crazy milligrams of edibles. And it's like, well, I don't. I consume every day, but I wouldn't even say that I consume a gram. I microdose. So I'll use my microdosing pen, I'll chuck it in and I'll take a few hits and I'll kind of do that throughout the day or at the night or what have you. And a lot of people think that you have to sit down and roll this huge joint and do their whole thing. But it's like you can consume cannabis and do it the exact way that you're like. There's no standard in which you are allowed or not allowed to consume. Like if you just want to roll a joint or have a cone, take a hit and put it down, like that's fine if that's what works for you, right? It's funny in the fact that I always look at it and, somebody that was new to alcohol, they're, because they have a bad experience with alcohol and they've had a bad experience with cannabis. And they say, I say, well, explain your alcohol. And they say, well, I was young and I didn't know. And I, started drinking tequila and, it really, messed me up. And I was, so hungover the next day. Like I was such an idiot for doing that. And then they had the same conversation with cannabis. And, I rolled this joint and I smoked this huge joint. And like, I was so high and it was so crazy. Like, cannabis is so bad. And it was like weird how you said you were so wrong for consuming that much alcohol, but you weren't wrong for consuming that much cannabis. It's the same thing. The ownership is on the person, right? You have to then, if it's your first time drinking tequila or what have you, or any type of alcohol, you have to go slow, right? Try it, see how you feel. If it works, take more. If not, stay at what you're at. It's the exact same thing with cannabis. But it's funny how in the societal realm or the thought, it's, shame on me for drinking this much alcohol, but shame on cannabis for making this happen to me, right? No. It's the same realm, right?
Yeah, personal responsibility.
Exactly,
No question.
exactly.
I still can't drink tequila. Ooh. I'm wondering over the next, 3 to 5 years, we will see regulations and stipulations change, things like that. I'm wondering, what do you guys think, in your opinion, the social and economic impacts we're going to see, countrywide, but more importantly, province-wide in Nova Scotia? Beau?
I think the first thing is going to be in and around businesses that are related to tourism. That'll be restaurants, cafes, concert halls, bars, that kind of thing, lounge licensing. And the biggest reason why is, where would you rather see Willie Nelson or Cypress Hill? Are you going to go see it in a venue that's alcohol licensed or a venue that's cannabis licensed? Those artists, I want to see them in a cannabis licensed venue.
Yeah.
Right?
For multi-purpose center.
Yeah. So, and those, I think, will be the first realm that we start to see a shift in regulations. Maybe I'm being extra hopeful and including, music venues. Maybe that won't happen right off the bat. Maybe I'm being hopeful there. I don't know. But yeah, I think it'll be in and around tourism. It should be anyways.
Oh, it's a cash cow. I'd love to see some cannabis cafes as well, hopefully in the next little while. Mm-hmm. We'll see how that goes. What do you think, Brad?
I think that it's cool. I think to understand what you're going to see within the next 4 to 5 years, we have to understand where the regulations are going to be within that next 4 to 5 years. Because once the regulations is a telltale sign of where the industry is going to be, and how we have to perform within those rules and regulations. So we get this I get this question a lot of like, where do you see Doobtool Inc. in 4 to 5 years or 10 years or what have you? And it's like, ugh, you got to tell me where the regulations are going to be first, right? And then I can kind of tell you how we would want to kind of tackle that set of regulations or that position. The amazing thing about it is that it's not gonna stop. It's not like the door is open, the floodgate is open now. So I only see progression. I only see kind of moving forward with the industry. I don't think that it's going to end this way. I don't stay the same right now. I would be very surprised if we're, having a live podcast in 5 years and we're like, well, the same thing I told you back, 5 years ago is the same thing that's happening now. Like, I really don't think that. And I honestly believe that's because, the consumer and the audience will demand more than that. They are going to say, we want this, or we want it to look like this or act like this, and I want to consume in a cafe, and I want to do this. And what ends up happening is they either, the government goes in and moves those regulations, or it becomes where the regulation is broken so much and the law is broken so much that they just end up going to that, or it doesn't end up being, illegal in that aspect. So 4 to 5 years, I think you're going to see, an industry that the majority of us are going to want to see. And I just hope that, in my case, and I can speak solely on our case, is just continuing to listen, right? Continuing to listen to what you want as a result of our company. So 4 years, I hope we're grown enough to where our audience and the consumers of our product and that use our product can be happy that we have kind of answered the questions that they've asked us, right? We wanted to see this, or we wanted to see that with your product, and that we have kind of spit that out as a result. So it's, who knows? We have to look at the regulations for sure.
I feel like you guys don't count sheep, you count rules and regulations to fall asleep.
Literally.
Those keep you awake.
I was just going to say,
You're not going to bed on those ones,
Other way around there.
it's the other way around.
Joe, what would you like to see happen in the next 3 to 5 years?
Yeah, we'll start, Canada as a whole. In 4 to 5 years, I can't make any predictions, but I definitely have hopes as to where the industry goes. And the benefits that cannabis can bring to Canada as a whole. I'd love to see that cannabis becomes an alternative medication for those medications that cause more harm than good. I'd love to see that alcohol and opioid related injuries and diseases will decrease because of cannabis normalization over that period of time, and also that the rest of the world comes to Canada to see how we have legalized cannabis and the positive changes it has created in our society, and that our tourism takes a boom. To Beau's point earlier there, I hope locally that more small businesses like Doobtool and Canadian Lumber come out into the market, and that we do have alternative businesses like restaurants and like cannabis tours, that tourism takes a bump here in Nova Scotia, because let's be honest, all of us that live here, we're extremely lucky, and I think we have a huge opportunity here to take advantage of the draw to Nova Scotia that we have worldwide here, and really make our footprint with cannabis here in Nova Scotia. Also, I hope the government gets behind these businesses and shows support and different ways to allow them to grow, because as these guys can attest to, it's not easy to raise money, especially when you're dealing with cannabis. The banks will not invest in this industry whatsoever. It's tough, and these.
It's hard enough just to have a bank account.
Exactly.
Literally, yeah.
These businesses are creating. If each of these guys want to, expand on this, we've created 40 jobs in Wentworth, Nova Scotia, a community where there's, very few jobs, well-paying jobs. I've got a couple of people that work here. Hopefully they love their job. I think they do. But we're creating jobs in areas, in rural areas and urban areas. And we only continue to expand, and we're looking to create a couple hundred jobs within the next 2 to 3 years here. So awesome. If the guys want to speak to that about creating jobs in Nova Scotia,
would you guys like to see your companies grow in that trend in that direction?
Absolutely. I'd love for us to have a warehouse facility that's 4 times the size that it is. I mean, my warehouse is pretty big as it is, but I mean, for me to have 4 or 5 times means that I have warehouse staff alone of 10 people. Right? Let alone what would be in my sales office, let alone what would be in the creation part of it, right? For us to have that, there definitely, I agree, Joe, we'd need more provincial support, let alone federal support, right? But again, that stems from there being still a social stigma attached to it, right? Just the fact that I said earlier, like, it's hard enough to open a bank account, let alone, like Joe said, get funding from the bank, right?
Yeah. And the United States has a lot to do with that.
The United States has a huge amount to do with that.
There's a lot of unforeseeables here that if legalization happens there's a whole realm of opportunities that are going to change
I agree.
for businesses in Canada.
I think the big thing too is just for the government to look at it and harness it. Like, harness this. Like, we're in. We've asked for it. We're here now. We're past legalization. We're past. I don't want to say the hardest part, but we're now as the first G7 country to come and do this. We're on the world stage. We do have the microscope on us, and it's like, okay, then we look at the government and say, like, you guys can either go, well, you know what, we want nothing to do with this, and you guys can try to figure this out, and we're going to hit you with these rules and regulations and figure your way out around it. Or they can say, you know what, okay, how do we really harness this? How do we really develop this as an industry economically, and put it within, socially implement it into society, and end up getting something good as a result, right? Like, the government does have the hand on being able to kind of lift us up a bit, and kind of allow us to, not so much be treading in water, but more or less be swimming. So it's like, hey guys, this is what it is. There's a lot of interest. We've asked for this. It's now legal. There's businesses coming up with great ideas. Help us out, right? And let's kind of develop this together instead of, us over here and you guys over there and them telling us, listen, you guys have to do this and have to do that. It's like, well, together, can we sit down and try to figure out how this can be done the best way and create something, really well in this, whether in this country or in Atlantic Canada or in this province, right?
Let's work together on this.
100%. Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, before we get out of here, anything exciting going on that you might want to let me know about? Whether it be Doobtool, Canadian Lumber, or SKOSHA.
Let's start at the end. Joe.
Yeah, I can only say so much about that. So yeah, strain-wise, we're continuing to put out new strains. We have a really, really wide range of strains that we have in Wentworth. So we're going to be switching things up, consistently, but obviously keeping on hand the strains that are most popular and that have gained the biggest following here in Nova Scotia. We do intend to expand our growing capacity and our product offerings across Canada and hopefully eventually over to the Europe market. So big things coming in the next couple of years with Breathing Greens.
That's really cool.
Well, these guys are setting the bar so high. Now I got to come out and say, no, I'm an inventor at heart, so I have a book full of different inventions, the Doobtool being one of them, and we have about a 3 to 4 product lineup after this. What we're really looking at right now and what we're excited for is just starting to answer kind of what the audience wants from us, right? It gets me giddy when I hear somebody kind of going, listen, we love this, or we want to change that. It's like, perfect, okay. So the next thing that we're going to spit out is going to have that kind of remediated, and we're going to be able to kind of focus on that within the tool. So just making, improving our business and improving quality and improving service is something that's super exciting for us. We think that the next lineup of products that we're going to be introducing, whether it be brand new SKUs, like brand new products, or iterations of the current Doobtool itself, we think that the audience is going to be is going to receive it very well. I would say the next kind of up for us is just hitting events, putting events together, getting the name out there, having awesome people sit around and listen to live podcasts. There's a lot of events that go on. There's a lot of events that we're excluded from, but then there's a lot of events that are going on that we can take part of. So, I think that it's, the future is wide for us. We can kind of go in any direction and try to really figure it out. So, but yeah, we're the gears are in motion right now, for sure.
Awesome, good to hear. And Beau?
Well, I'm just stoked that for Canadian Lumber, we have a number of products coming out, more paper sizes. We've started with cones manufacturing now as well, so we'll have cones on the market very soon. I'm super excited about some of our collabo projects with other companies in the industry, being able to tie together and put out. It's allowed us to also expand and tap into other markets. So over the next 6 months roughly, it'll be pretty exciting, the scope that we're doing. And a lot of it stems too because we've just started selling in the States within the last couple of months. So now teaming up with a lot of American accessory companies to do really interesting collabos.
That's really cool. Now the Americans are sitting around being like, what's this Canadian rolling paper doing here?
Yeah, they are. They're asking. It's good.
Very cool, very cool.
We're very noticeable on the shelf, being plaid. Yes. Everyone else is black or green. It stands out. It's good.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, I want to take the time to thank everyone for coming out today to learn what these awesome gentlemen had to say about the cannabis industry and their companies. And Beau, Brett, and Joe, thank you so much for this opportunity. This was awesome.
Thank you.
Mark.
Likewise,
Yeah.
Thank you. Awesome. Well, for Brand New View, I'm Mark Boudreau.
Good job, buddy.
With the same old blues. I was the same old me.